In addition to my YouTube channels, I also have a photography podcast. I recently did a YouTube video about using an MUA for a model shoot. And one of my podcast episodes is a discussion about makeup artists with another MUA. So I thought it'd be really good for my viewers to maybe have a listen to this episode. If you want to find out more about my podcast, or you want to subscribe or listen through the available platforms, the links are below in this episode. Enjoy the podcast. Hello and welcome to the 1/160 of a second photography podcast. In today's episode, I'm talking with Jasmine, who is a makeup artist and does makeup for photo shoots. Jasmine, would you just mind sort of introducing yourself, please?
Okay, yes, I'm a makeup artist, primarily based in Birmingham, also based in like the surrounding UK. So I do events, I do photo shoots, I do weddings, proms, all that kind of thing. I do the glamorous makeup, also do a bit of special effects and body painting, things like that, and avant-garde and wigs, and just a bit of everything really. And yeah, for the past few years, I've been working across the UK doing things like that. So I've worked a lot in Birmingham, also Brighton, Chichester, places like that. And yeah, it's been a really exciting, interesting, varied job, really. It's been nice.
Thank you. So is most of your makeup for photography, or is it for anything else?
I've done a lot for photography lately. Ideally, what I want to get into is film and TV. So I've done one film, did that with a really great team down in Northampton, and I'm hoping to work with them again soon. But yeah, I have done a lot for photographers and with photography, and it is just nice. It's a very nice way to see your work afterwards, working with someone who knows how to shoot it and how to make it look the way you've envisioned it.
I'm guessing the makeup you do is linked to the theme of the photo shoot.
Yes, always, which is really interesting. You can have, I mean, for example, I had a booking yesterday and it's for models. It's very natural makeup because it's a product advertisement shoot, ideally. So you do get some who just want it very laid back, very high fashion, just natural, glowy skin, that kind of thing. But you also get some, I mean, I did a shoot last year, which was like a dark angel theme. So you had like the black feathers, you had gold body paint, all sorts of things like that. So it varies so much from shoot to shoot. You can do something so laid back to something with massive amounts of adornments and paint and all sorts of things like that, and anywhere in between, really.
I've done one shoot with a makeup artist, and it was a very quick shoot, and I've been involved as an assistant assisting a second shoot where there was a makeup artist. And for me, I think it would, using a makeup artist, just reduce the amount of editing I needed to do. It sort of gave a better finish. But I guess from a model's point of view, they might say, well, I can do my makeup to a high standard. So what does bringing a makeup artist or a hairstylist or anything else, what does bringing those people to a shoot help with?
I think sometimes, although it's great to do makeup to a high standard, it's also about being able to professionally bring that creative element. Like you can use makeup to make people feel a certain way. It's very emotive. You can create a character within the makeup, really. And if it is a specific shoot that needs a specific kind of feeling, a specific kind of emotion behind the pictures, it can be a really good way to get that model into that mindset and to give her that confidence, and it really can completely change the vibe and the energy of the shoot.
You've talked a little bit about some of the shoots you've been on. Can you talk any more about the different types of photography shoots you've been involved with?
Well, I've done a lot of studio shoots, obviously, which have been wonderful. I've also done location shoots, and those are always really fun. I've done some in like woodland areas, I've done some on set, and all sorts of different scenarios where you never really know what's going to happen, which is very exciting. And yeah, I've done a bit which has involved videographers as well, and that's always lovely. Just to be able to see a video at the end of the course of the day and the course of how things have developed, and then to see the end result is just a really, really lovely way to be able to look at things.
Well, you need quite a bit of time, but I guess you're also time limited, particularly if you're, say, in a location shoot or the photographer's hiring the studio for a certain amount of time. How do you balance that? How do you balance making a high performance output against the time constraints and getting to shoot at a certain time?
I would definitely say planning. It's all about planning. If you ask whoever's hiring you beforehand how long you have when you're asking them what they want, because you can always plan something big and elaborate, but there's a lot of tips and tricks and things like that that you can say, okay, so I've only got half an hour. So if I prepare this first, then all I need to do is this when I'm there. A lot of planning, or if someone says, oh, you've got all the time in the world, which, very rarely happens, but occasionally, then you can go like, oh, I can do this and this and this, and you can really go all out. But if you do have a time constraint, it doesn't mean you can't do something brilliant with it. You can. It's just about planning, maybe doing some of the work beforehand slightly, just to give yourself that time when you're there, just so it's a bit quicker and easier.
So let's say you were doing a makeup shoot with me and I'd booked a model. We were going to go on location. What information would you need from me and what sort of questions would you ask me?
Normally, the first thing I ask is for a mood board, or just pictures, ideas of what you want, just because I find, obviously you can say to me, I want this and this, but pictures just help to really make sure we're seeing the same vision before a shoot, because you don't want to go, oh, they've said avant-garde, smoky eye, this is what I've got in my head, and then to do it and look at each other and realize that's not what I envisioned. So mood boards are really, really vital, just to make sure you're as much on the same page as possible. Also, I do ask about timing, about location, number of models. Obviously, health and safety questions like allergies and things like that are important. A lot of the time I will ask to get in touch with the models, because that's also a great way to plan. Even if I'm getting in touch with you as a photographer, just to get in touch with the models and say, oh, so, what kind of thing are you comfortable with? Just to make sure they're happy, just to make sure they're on board, make sure if there's any products they prefer over other products. For example, you could have a client who's vegan. So that, again, would completely change your product based, if that makes sense, So, yeah, things like that. And, obviously location, so I can plan out timing and, yeah, that kind of thing, really.
So what do you do with someone like me who would just say, I just want good makeup, which is completely vague? What would you do with someone like that?
In that case, I would make a mood board. I'd make a slightly varied mood board of very natural, sort of, from what you mentioned before, kind of skin correcting makeup, where there's not too much editing involved afterward, but the model still looks like herself. So I think I'd make a mood board with very natural makeup like that, and maybe with makeup that's natural but slightly built upon. That way you've got a range of options, and that way I could send that to you and say, okay, this is some of the ideas I have in mind. Could you maybe like pick your top 3, for example, of, or an image that you particularly love and would like me to work from? That way, even if you've said, oh, just natural makeup, we've still got it down to a very specific idea.
You need a bit of preparation, I'm guessing, as a makeup artist. You need to know what the look is and what to bring and stuff. And really, I suppose before that, you need to get out with the photographer exactly what's required, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, it does help. I mean, obviously, once you're there on set, I can still be doing the makeup. And, it's important to communicate constantly whilst you're doing the makeup. Be like, oh, I've just done this eye look. How do you feel? And that way, the photographer can go, oh, I love this, but I'm not a fan of the shape or something like this. And also, to do photos as you go along, you can, say, okay, I've only done the eye makeup. But if we take a photo of it now professionally, we can see how it looks against the backdrop, the lighting, etc. So, even whilst you're there, you can always adjust things, but it just helps. It helps with anything. I mean, I'm sure with photography, you have to plan it. It just makes the shoot go so much more smoothly whilst you're there if you plan beforehand. Equally, even if you do turn up and it's a little bit more experimental or a little bit, then equally that's fine too. It's completely the way you work it, really.
So, how easy is it to accommodate a photographer's change on set?
I find creatively it's not too difficult. I think as a creative person, I move quite well with change, but it's very much have a varied kit. That's always important. You know, anything could happen and anything could change, but as long as you can say, okay, that's fine. I've got this in my kit, I can do it, or you know what, I've brought this along and that would be great. It's not just about the makeup, bring a small pair of scissors, bring adornments, even if you don't need adornments, because you never know where the shoot's going. They might need them, and and hair kits and just little things like pins and maybe some glue and stuff like that, just so no matter what changes happen, you can go, actually, I've got this, and you know what, we could do something really amazing with it. And that way it works. It's just to let your creativity flow, and if you let that happen, then you can really tackle any change and make it into something really artistic and wonderful. Yeah.
So the obvious thing with makeup is beauty and fashion, but there's also other elements to makeup. Horror, there's sort of effects, there's other things. But where does most of the demand lie? Is it with sort of the beauty aspects of work?
There is a lot of beauty. There is. I think it depends on which kind of community, if it were, that you're looking at. If you look at, obviously, the fashion community, if you go for, fashion shoots, obviously you will get more fashion. But then you do get a lot of models that do want more special effects, and body painting. Body painting is becoming increasingly popular within fashion. I found that. But no, I feel like there is lots of demand for every equal part of artistry. It's just very much within which community you're looking in. So obviously, if you go to film, they will want a lot less beauty and fashion. They'll want some, definitely, but it will a lot of the time be a bit more about the special effects and things like that. With a little bit of beauty and natural makeup just to go for certain parts of certain scenes. Yeah, I think there's a demand for everything, really. It's more which community, which area of the industry you're looking.
So when you're with a photographer, once you've done the makeup, is your job done or is there more to it?
Oh, no, definitely not. I mean, I always stay along for touch-ups and things like that. I like to watch the shoot because I guess it is your work, and you like to see what's going on and you like to see how it looks, or to perhaps say, oh, I love this, but do you mind just doing a little close-up shot for me or something like that? Or, oh, could we try this with the lighting and things like that, just to sort of be involved in the whole process and just to see the end result. It's really lovely, and just to be there because it's such a fun atmosphere to be in, a load of creatives together, and just to watch the end result. I feel like if I did the makeup and packed up my bags, I'd be terrified if the model's lipstick came up and I wasn't there to touch it up. But also I feel like I'd be missing out on a very creative and fun experience, it's nice to see the whole I guess maybe lifespan. Would you call it a lifespan? Because makeup's so temporary. But the whole, that of your makeup play out to see how it goes with the shoot.
You've been around photographers and you've been on set for maybe quite some time if you stay to the end of the shoot. What sort of things have you picked up that photographers do to really elevate their shoots?
I guess lighting and backdrop is a big one. A lot of photographers really know how to make the most of a certain lighting. You'll look at your makeup and you'll be like, oh, that looks lovely like that. And then a photographer can take it and they can add depth. They can add, kind of drama to it if they want to, and completely change it. Or I think, again, like a makeup artist, it's very much what a photographer has in their kit as well. Creatively, you can have photographers who are like, oh, I've got this kind of lighting, or I've got this backdrop and this would be amazing. And it can completely change the portrayal of a look and just turn it into something brilliant, and really pull it in different directions. It's not just about a photo, it's very much how you take it, what you take it with, and what that tells whoever's going to see the photo afterwards. You can go in so many creative directions with it, and it's really lovely to see what another creative would do with the makeup you've produced.
You touched on this earlier when you mentioned, oh, you might ask for a certain shot. You are a makeup artist, but you need photos to get an awareness out, to sort of sell your service, to show what you can do. So how do you develop your portfolio? Is it you ask the photographer for copies of the shoot? You ask the photographer for special things? You say, can I have a close-up of that? How do you start to build, or how would a makeup artist build their portfolio?
I started off doing TFP shoots. So with TFP, the whole idea is it is time for photographs, so you get all the photographs back. And then, further on, when I moved away from TFP and more into just predominant, just makeup work, as it were. It's very important to have an agreement with the photographer beforehand, just to understand where you stand. Like, okay, so are you happy for me to have a small selection of the photos, or maybe all of them just for my portfolio? And more often than not, a photographer wants their work to be out and about and seen just as much as you want yours out, so they'll be fine with it. But it is very important just to have that understanding, like, even to have a contract, really, just to say, okay, after the shoot, do you mind if I take your photo and put it on my social media, my Facebook, business cards, whatever, just to make sure you're on the same page, because it is their photo just as much as it's your makeup. And yeah, I guess within the shoot, obviously I do use the overall photos from the shoot because it is lovely to see the overall final image. But as invasively as possible, it is nice just to say, oh, would you mind getting a photo just a close up at this angle, just because I really want to show off this detail of the makeup. Or also, I love it. I love getting professionally taken behind the scenes photos. That's something I really love. And it's really lovely if a photographer will see you touching something up and you'll notice they'll sort of take a few photos and you're like, that's great. Because I think currently there's a big target audience, really, for behind the scenes kind of thing. People love vlogs and people love seeing not just the final image, but how things are done at the moment. So to have little images of you, say, curling hair or touching up lipstick or applying eye makeup, it is just a lovely thing to add to your portfolio. Also, just for some authenticity, in a way, just to prove, I am posting these photos and it is me, because, ideally, you could be getting those photos from anywhere, really. And I think it's nice, definitely, for potential employers. They also get to see how you work and how you work professionally, to see, oh yeah, what she's doing looks very professional and I like the final image. And it's just, yeah, I feel like there is a greater target market at the moment in the whole kind of progression of things and people wanting to see how creative people create things more than they did in the past.
So you've identified really that the two key outputs for you are the images from the shoot, but also BTS, because BTS is a whole other world of outputs for you and makeup artists in general.
Yeah, definitely. It's also a lovely little learning opportunity occasionally. It's very nice to look and be like, you do as an artist, you look at something you do and you criticize it naturally. So it's obviously, oh, I love the way I've done that, but why was I doing it like that? And it's a good way also to develop as an artist, because when you're doing the makeup, you're doing it, you're focused, you're working on an end goal, you're not looking at how you're doing it. So it's very lovely just to look back and say, oh, I love that, but I'd like to change that. That's a good opportunity, yeah.
So what type of makeup works really well on a photo shoot, Jasmine?
I guess the important part is to always bear in mind how it translates to the camera. So if you're shooting close up, go as intricate, go into the little details as much as you want, because that's very beautiful and there is something very skilled and lovely about that. But I think it's very important to consider how the makeup's going to be seen before you create it. So if it's going to be a close-up image, it's lovely to do something small and detailed and intricate because there's something very beautiful about that. But if it's going to be seen from a distance, you've got to make sure that it translates to the camera. You've got to make sure that it can be seen. You don't want to do all this work and for people not to be able to see it. So sometimes it is useful to go for something a bit bolder, a bit more defined, something that from a distance can be picked up. And also to make sure that you're picking colours that work with the lighting you're using. If you're using a very bright light, maybe don't use light colours because they can run the risk of being bleached out. Obviously, you can have light colours and them still be picked up. It's very dependent on the lighting, but you do need to consider what's going to be bleached out, what's going to be picked up, and primarily just what translates to the camera, not what translates to what you're seeing.
So you need essentially to have an understanding of what lighting is going to be used, how it's going to be used, a bit about the background. You need to give consideration to how things are going to be shot to really help with your makeup, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, to put it simply, it's kind of like if I was doing the blue background, maybe I wouldn't do a red lip. I'd know that clashed. Like I said, if it's light makeup and light lighting, you run the risk of not seeing it, so you've got to consider that. And the same for dark makeup, If it's a dark background, maybe go with something a bit brighter. And it's just little things like that to consider just to make sure that, you want your work to be seen at the end of the day. You don't want to get these images back and think, oh, my makeup looks lovely, but it clashes with the background, or oh, that looks great, but you can't see it as much as you would have if I'd have done that. And it's just very important to make sure you know all the variables of the shoot before you start the makeup, so that you can make the most of it for yourself as much as for the rest of the team.
Now, do you need to know the skin tone of the model? Because I'm guessing you would do different makeup for a dark skin model to an olive skin model to a light skin model.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, what I make sure to do is always have products in my kit that cover all skin tones. So no matter who I meet, then, I'm prepared, really. And I think if you've got a basic look in your mind, have that look, you know what you're doing, and then make sure you've got the products within your kit so that you can change it subtly. So different foundations, maybe, okay, you're going for maybe a bronzy eyeshadow, but have one bronzy eyeshadow that would show well on fair skin, another one that's slightly different so it works with olive skin, and another one that's slightly different so it works on dark skin, because I think different colours do show up differently on skin, and sometimes it can just be a matter of changing shades slightly or pigmentations and things like that. So as long as you've got a look in mind and a wide shade and product variation in your kit before you get on set, then you should be fine to adapt it to really anyone.
How do you make sure you don't bring attention to the wrong thing? Is there a danger that the makeup will stand out more than the product or the model or the dress?
So makeup can really influence and change the shoot, because it can just give that model, a sharper look, a clearer focus. She may have a great look before. For example, if I'm doing a product shoot, you can really bring out the product and sell the product more with the right makeup. If you look at the product and go, this dress is lovely and I love the jewel colours it's got in it, let's do some jewel colours in the makeup. And instantly you're making that product pop and you're making that sell. And for, the target audience, so for example, anyone looking to buy that outfit, you're suddenly making that image more memorable. And I think sometimes the right makeup can make a look more memorable, and you've really got to look at what the makeup's for. Is the makeup for the makeup? Is it a shoot where the makeup is the main focus, or is the makeup to complement another element of the shoot, such as the hair or the dress or the model herself? So yeah, you've really got to look at complementing and how you bring that out and how you make it more noticeable, and how in the final images you just make everything that little bit more focused and visible.
And I guess deciding on that balance comes down to the photographer or the art director or whoever has the ultimate say, perhaps even the client at the end of the day.
Definitely, that's something you've got to bear in mind. You've got to make sure you're not doing makeup that overpowers something. If it's a product shoot, you don't want people to be ignoring the product because you've done very vibrant, very loud makeup and that's all they can look at. You've got to make sure there's a balance. You've got to say, okay, I'll take this and I'll use this colour, but I'll only use it this much. You've just got to look at what complements the outfit as opposed to what overpowers it. Almost like if you were picking a pair of shoes to go with something, or a bag or jewelry, you'd look at something that complemented it, not that stole the show. And sometimes you have to do that with makeup. Sometimes it's a case of less is more, or what brings it out as opposed to what overpowers it. I think it's just important to constantly share your ideas with the rest of the team. Constantly, if there's no one about, just pop into another room and just say, oh, hi, I've just done this lip colour. I'm happy with it. But before I go any further, I want to check you're happy with it too. And to do that throughout the look, a lot of other professionals will appreciate that, really. They'll appreciate you asking and taking the time just to make sure the looks exactly as they want it, because it's easier to do that as you're going along than to do a full face and say, okay, here's everything, what do you think? And then to go, oh, lovely, but change that and change that and change that, and then you're adding perhaps another half an hour on, whereas if you just do it as you go along, it's so much quicker, so much easier just to make things perfect. And I think, my goal really is to make sure that everything I do is perfect by the time it hits the set or, goes behind the camera, everything like that.
From your perspective, where do you get most images for your portfolio? Do they come mostly from TFP shoots that you've done, or do you get an equal number from paid shoots?
I think it's more of a transgression at the moment. I think at the beginning of my career, it would have been all TFP because obviously when you're starting out, when you apply to jobs, you have to apply with your experience. So if you've got less experience, it is harder. So I think if you were to look at my portfolio, you could almost draw a line, almost, between the TFP aspect when I was starting out to the paid jobs that I'm doing later into my career, if that makes sense. Because once you've got TFP, it's so much easier to get work, so much easier to go, okay, here's my portfolio. I've done this, I've done this, I've done this. And, it's a lot easier to get paid work that way. So yeah, I think it's more of a gradual progression. It's more TFP work in the beginning through to paid work. And then, occasionally with TFP work dotted about, because it is very much, if I see something that looks just so exciting and amazing, and I haven't got this in my portfolio, then, absolutely I'll go for it. So it's more of a transgression really, with a little bit of TFP dotted about.
So does that mean that once you start picking up more commercial gigs and opportunities that you shelve your early TFP work from your portfolio?
Everything is always important. All the work you've always created, it's always important to show all of that off as long as it's to a standard you like. Obviously, if you look back and go, I love that image then, but it's not showing off the skills I want it to show off now, then that's fine. But no, it's always good to keep things relevant. Always good to say, throwbacks, do throwbacks. Throwbacks are great. And just, all your work is important, whatever stage of your career it was in. So it's always good to, show it off and put it out there and keep it relevant because it's all art at the end of the day.
How do you achieve a vision on a shoot? How do you help a photographer achieve his vision?
So I suppose if someone came up to me, oh, I want to do this shoot, I want this theme, I want this kind of end result. As I said earlier, mood boards are key to come up with ideas. And also, I think for a makeup artist, it's useful to add product knowledge into that. So if you have a mood board, if you have a plan to start off with, and then as a makeup artist, you can go, oh, you might not have known, but there's this great product and I think this would really suit, or I've got this amazing adornment. And if we added that, that would just elevate the whole look. And I think just to take an idea and to build on it, to add your knowledge of makeup and combine that with a knowledge of photography, just to see how much you can build the look to get it as professional and impressive as possible.
So I'm not a full-time photographer. In fact, I'm not even a part-time photographer. I don't earn my living from photography. I do it as a hobby, and I do this podcast and the other things I do related to photography as a hobby. So it's really quite easy for me to achieve my vision because I'm not doing it for anyone else. So if I might put a casting out and models will apply for my casting for my vision. Or if I'm responding to someone else's casting, even though it's their casting, it's going to be generally my vision because I'm the photographer. We might talk about a few bits and bobs, but it probably more than 75% the way I see things because, again, I'm the photographer. So it must be quite difficult as a makeup artist when you want to achieve your vision. If you have something really specific you want to have or do, or a look you really, really want to get, how do you go about achieving your vision?
I guess in a similar way to the way you would, I'd put out a casting, or obviously I have contacts such as photographers and I know they're different styles. So sometimes you'd say, oh, this style of photography would be great for this, or oh, this person's style would be great. So sometimes I would ask specifically people I know, or sometimes I'd put out a casting. And, it's just very important just to communicate your vision the way you would with yours, to say that this is what I want to do, this is the idea, this is the kind of person I'm looking for, this is the kind of team I want to build, and just to go from there to build it. And yeah, I think it's a very similar method to the method you'd use. Really, just it's all about bringing the right people together, and as long as there's a vision that everybody loves, it should generally go very smoothly, I guess.
So how do you work with models, and are there any disagreements? Models say, oh, I don't want this is terrible. I'm not implying in any stretch of the imagination that your makeup is terrible, but do you find models want to quite strongly give their input, or are they quite passive and just let you put on whatever makeup and whatever style you want?
I've been quite lucky. A lot of the models I've worked with have been really lovely people, and a lot of them have been quite relaxed and quite, happy to just kind of enjoy having their makeup done and enjoy having that bit of downtime. And I think a lot of the time with models, if you're working on a shoot, a lot of the time it is a creative director or somebody who's planned the look. So, a lot of the time they can be very helpful actually, saying things like, oh, just to let you know, this works well with my skin, or just to let you know, this product works better, because obviously, you only know yourself as well as you do. So they know what works for them, and they can give me little bits of tips and little bits of input and help just on personal things like, oh, I've got this skin type, so maybe use this kind of foundation and things like that. But generally, no, they're very laid back and very happy to go with whatever the theme of the shoot is, whatever the creative director's planned. And yeah, generally I found that they're very lovely and very relaxed and just happy with looks. But at the same time, I love to, communicate and collaborate with whoever I'm working with, because I think a vision should be created by an entire team whenever possible, kind of it takes a village, I guess. And I love to see a model's input as well. If a model says to me, oh, I love this, but I think this could really suit my bone structure or my eyes or something like that, then I'm more than happy to take that on board and to see where that goes, because 9 times out of the 10, the model knows her face best, and chances are it will be something that will make the look just, really great.
So sometimes on a photography shoot or working with someone, it can all go wrong. You can be in the middle of a field, it can rain, the lighting can be too harsh. And generally I'm able to work around these things and find solutions. But where can it go wrong from a makeup point of view, and what do you do when it does?
Well, definitely rain is not a friend of makeup. Definitely not. I do like to plan before shoot that even if we're shooting outside, that we have somewhere indoors to do the makeup. For example, I was shooting a woodland shoot in Birmingham several months back, and obviously the shoot was planned in the woodland. But if I was to say, oh yeah, let's do makeup in the woodland, it could rain, it could be windy, we could be blasted by leaves, or best case scenario, it's England, we'd just be freezing. So, it was very much, okay, if we do this woodland scene, that's great, but can we find somewhere indoors locally to do the makeup? And I found a lovely cafe, and they were super nice. We bought a couple of cups of coffee and that kind of thing, and they did just let us set up on one of their sofas and do the makeup at this cafe. And we met some lovely people whilst we were there. It's actually really interesting doing makeup in public, because you do get people suddenly go, oh, what are you doing? Oh, what's going on? I met this one guy, and he turns around to me and he goes, I'm an actor. And at first I thought, oh, you're pulling my leg kind of thing, like, because I'm a makeup artist. And turns out he generally was this actor who done various things with the BBC, and it was just really cool. Suddenly we're in this cafe and we're all talking creatively about art and stuff, and it was just lovely. So yeah, I think sometimes always do makeup indoors if you can. That's my advice. Try not to do it outside, because I think definitely in this country with this climate, there's just too many variables that can go wrong. So if you're shooting outside later in the day, you can always ask the photographer, the organizer, or even just find a place yourself where you can say, okay, but we'll meet here, we'll do the makeup, and then we'll go to the decided location for the shoot.
I've got to say that's such a good tip, to get somewhere like a local cafe or a little location near to where you're going to be shooting. That's such a good idea. So well done on that. This podcast is probably listened to by, not exclusively, but probably listened to by the majority of people being photographers. So if we've got a photographer who's a listener and he's thinking, oh, I'm going to do a makeup shoot, this sounds really good, how would they go about booking a makeup artist?
A lot of makeup artists have social media, so always check social media, especially locally, to see who is about as a makeup artist, Facebook, Instagram, all that kind of thing. If you search for makeup artists near you, you will get a lot of responses. I'm in a lot of groups. So obviously I'm on Purple Port, Star Now, things like that. But it's also important, you get Facebook groups, photographers and makeup artists and meetups and things like that. And just to join groups, because there are so many, with technology these days, there's so many groups and forums the creative people, are there, to post their own jobs and also to reply to yours. So yeah, just make sure you're in like groups local to your area. And then if you are, and if you've got a job, it's very easy to say, oh, for example, I need a model who is Birmingham local for like next Tuesday. And if you're in a group like that, it's very easy to find like-minded people who want to help you out.
Very good ideas. Now we're coming to the end of the podcast episode, and it's been a really interesting episode. So thank you so much, Jasmine. But where can people find your work online?
My Instagram's Jasmine_Elizabeth_MUA. My Facebook's all under the same. If you Google that, you should find all of my work.
So thank you very much for listening to the 160th of a Second Photography podcast. I'd like to thank our guest today, Jasmine.
Hey, well, this has been a really fun podcast, so thank you. It's been really fun.
And hopefully this has maybe inspired you to use a makeup artist in one of your shoots. Do reach out and let me know if that's been the case. Thank you. Goodbye.